left side, but on the right side as well. Both of those are completely, perfectly sculpted legs. They're wired into the brain-like legs. That mutant fly dies in its food because it's trying to walk on its head.
So it has legs where its antenna should be.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
How does that happen?
How it happens, the reason why a fly turns into a monster, led H2BaBB scientists to discover something truly remarkable about how genes build bodies. Within every living creature on Earth is a complete set of genes for body making. Genes are short sections of the vast DNA code. But recently, something amazingly simple and fundamental turned up. Among the tens of thousands of genes that make things in the body, there's another kind of gene. A gene that tells other genes what to do. A master switch, organizing the highly complex operation of making a body, even a fly's.
When this mutant came along, I realized 30 years ago, this was the thing to work on. And I knew then those were the genes to get, that those had some very, deep secrets about basic processes of laying out a body plan and controlling embryonic development.
This mutation led scientists to the identity of 8 master toolkit genes, called Hox genes. There are some 14,000 genes that go on to build a fly, but the process starts with the toolkit. These toolkit genes tell other genes where to put the head, the tail, all the limbs, and antennae. A problem in one of these genes during development can transform a creature into a catastrophe.
That alteration you see, the transformation of antennae into legs, that's what happens when the normal gene is put in the wrong place.
Oh, so it's misplacing that part of the fly body to a different spot.
Exactly. Tinker toys.
Okay, so these are like little building blocks that control different parts of the body.
That's exactly right.
Tinker toys, building blocks, Lincoln logs. Could the engineering behind a fly really come down to a handful of control genes? A toolbox for building life? And it gets even stranger.
For years we thought, all right, great, we're working on this obscure little problem that may solve aspects of how you build a fruit fly.
Okay.
But what does it have to do with people? Well, it turns out that related genes are present in our very own genomes, and they're important for our development as a fetus.
Another discovery. Toolkit genes don't just exist in flies. They're in a huge variety of animals, including humans. That's why there is such similarity in the embryos of a fly, a mouse, an elephant, and a human, despite how different they'll look as adults.
A similar kind of recipe underlies the development of bodies as different as those of sea anemones and humans. I mean, that's really remarkable, that a version of the same recipe can build bodies that are so utterly different.
The finished product may vary. Fins, feathers, or fingers. But like distinctive cars, underneath the paint job, the genetic chassis is the same. It's a new way to look at nature's bodybuilding. As if there's a tool shop inside each of us, using a similar set of genes to make parts and appendages in very different organisms.
So these genetic toolkits are like the Legos. And you could make a house out of Legos, or you could make a car out of Legos. You don't need a different type of Lego to make a car.
The discovery of a shared genetic toolkit points to a deep kinship between different species. Powerful new evidence for one of Darwin's most important ideas, the descent of all animals from a common ancestor. But it raises a problem that H2BaBB must solve as well.
There was every expectation that we humans had the most genes. We had 100,000 genes. We would have genes that a lowly fruit fly or a sea squirt would know nothing about. But this is not true. All animals have a very similar set of basic genes, and yet we're so different. So how do you explain that? What's the answer?
The answer to this mystery will take Will Wright back to the beginnings of the toolkit, to some of the earliest moments in creature making, and to one of the strangest ancestors we have on the evolutionary tree. Nothing can match evolution's awesome power for creating creatures. While designing a new game that simulates evolution, Will Wright is investigating what the latest science has uncovered about evolution's creature making. A toolkit of genes that shapes the intricate details of size, structure, pattern, and parts in all animals. How did the toolkit get set in motion in the first place? To find out, Will Wright is retracing its steps. From our present-day body design, we're headed to one of its earliest defining moments, when the toolkit was deployed in our earliest ancestor, a worm. The Earth has gone through a number of particularly intense bouts of creature making, but none as forceful as a time some 530 million years or so ago. It's known as the Cambrian explosion. A burst of animal forms appeared, the ancient ancestors of virtually all the animals that swim, fly, and crawl today. Is this the moment when the toolkit took off?
What's that?
Oh, it's a carnivorous terror bird from South America. But I
Wow.
actually have something a lot older to show you.
Okay.
Will Wright is visiting paleontologist Neil Shubin to find out how toolkit genes played a role in expanding evolution's creativity.
So here's where creature making went crazy. I mean, back about 530 or so million years ago. You know, you used to just see a blizzard of diversity of creatures coming about.
This is the Cambrian explosion?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. You start before the Cambrian, at about 600 million years ago, with creatures like this. Doesn't look like much, it's just a disk.
Okay.
By about 50 million years later, you find bodies of all kinds. Bodies with all different sorts of appendages, antennae and limbs and so forth.
The Cambrian was evolution's big bang. But were toolkit genes the trigger? It may not be that simple. Toolkit genes were probably building simple organisms before the Cambrian, so this potential somehow remained unrealized. Also, there may have been environmental causes. Ancient land masses were changing, riven by inland seas and lakes, expanding ecological niches for animals to differentiate. Perhaps a changing environment pushed the pre-existing genetic toolkit into high gear.
At some point, you got the tools together where all of a sudden there was a quantum leap in the ability to suddenly make new types of bodies.
And among all the new types of bodies, our branch of the tree started too.
So this is one of our oldest ancestors.
Well, it's related to it. And in fact, you know, it shows the basic body plan that we have today. It has a nerve cord that runs along the top of the body. It even has gill slits. This little worm contains a piece of our own, essential parts of our own body. And it appeared about 530 million years ago.
Eons ago, an ancient worm launched our basic body plan. And it would become a predominant way of making bodies. Symmetrical and streamlined, bilateral, and laid out head to tail. Today, most of the animal life on the planet, including humans, is built on this same bilateral design. It's perfect for mobility. Over time, it's given rise to a huge range of successful survivors. And the genetic toolkit has traveled up the evolutionary tree with them.
Please pull this back downwards toward the ground.
For the Spore evolution game, developers soon realized that making creatures bilateral, identical on either side, needed to be hardwired.
That's one of those things that I think you kind of take for granted, the fact that, you know, all the legs have to move the same distance, no matter how long they are.
Early product testing showed that despite the wild designs players would make, bilateral patterning was almost always a given. Evolution's ancient genetic toolkit laid out a basic bilateral body. Then, a further step expanded the potential for generating new kinds of bodies: segmentation. Will Wright is at another Evo-Devo lab to see toolkit genes in action.
So we want to understand how this incredible, wonderful diversity is generated, what makes these animals different from one another. But to do that, we have to understand how the basic body plan of all of these things is set up.
They all use the same tricks to create this diversity.
Exactly. What we've discovered is that there's the same sort of toolkit of genes that's always used to make the animal.
Once again, the fruit fly is the preferred specimen.